Good afternoon and welcome everybody to this Q&A panel session. This is the final session in our two-day annual public user event. I really hope that you've had a chance to attend some of the many sessions that we've run over the last couple of days. We've run 20 sessions. And at those sessions, you'll have had a chance to hear from leaders from across our organisation, HMCTS, about the projects and services that we're working on as part of our reform programme and wider. My name is Liz Riddler, and I lead the User Experience and Insight Division here at HMCTS. What does that mean? So in my team, we are part of the reform programme, working on user-centred design, carrying out user research and supporting the development of digital services and online content that works for all our users. And we also work with live services to provide user data and insight to support those teams to make improvements that improve user experience and access to justice. And it is my team who's organised this event that's happening over the last couple of days. And for that, I say a big well done and thank you to everybody involved. So back to the Q&A session. What's it all about? So as I said, over the last couple of days, we've provided you with lots of information about the services that we're currently redesigning and those that we've launched since this time last year. And I really hope that you found something of interest and you've had a chance to contribute and engage. However, if you've not had a chance to ask your question, there is an opportunity to do that now. And I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by colleagues from HMCTS, who I will shortly ask to introduce themselves. And these colleagues make up our panel. We've really aimed to convene a panel that represents the diversity of services that we run here. But of course, we do run a huge variety of services, so it is possible we'll not have the answers to everything that you ask. We've been asking you to contribute your questions since the event went live, and in fact from before, and there is an opportunity to ask your questions live in the Q&A panel in the webinar. And we're going to be coming to those questions, as I said, those that you've submitted ahead of the event and the live, but we will be grouping them to avoid duplication, and we will be focusing on questions in the main on our reform programme, which has been the focus of the content over the last couple of days. So without further ado, I'm going to ask each of my panelist colleagues to introduce themselves and say a little bit about what they do here at HMCTS, which will help the audience in framing any live questions they'd like to pose. And just to refresh colleagues, we're going to go Jason, Jane, Adam, Rosie, Emily. So when you've introduced yourself, if you can just hand to the next panel member rather than coming back to me. Jason, to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Latham. I'm the Development Director for HMCTS. What does that mean? It means I'm responsible for the national performance of all of our jurisdictional services. That includes helping ensure that we design reform services in the right way, which deliver real value to the people who use them, but also make sure that we can operate those services more effectively than we have been able to in the past. I also have responsibility for the ongoing recovery of our courts and tribunals from the impacts of the COVID pandemic. That is pretty simple. It's reducing caseloads in each jurisdiction and reducing waiting times. I'm now going to pass over to Jane.
Thanks, Jason. Hello, everybody. I'm Jane Gardner. I'm the service owner for crime reform at HMCTS, and that means that I'm responsible for delivering reform to the crime service. You may have heard of the Common Platform. That's one of the products that I'm responsible for delivering, as well as the Single Justice Service and process improvements across the criminal service. And over to Adam.
Thanks, Jane. So I'm Adam Lennon. I won't go through what a service owner is because I'll repeat what Jane and Jason have said, but I'm from the family jurisdiction. So for family, that means services such as probate, divorce, and private law disputes about the arrangements for children. So I do very similar roles to Jane and Rosie and Emily, who are going to come on next, but for the family jurisdiction. I'll hand over to Rosie.
Hi everyone, my name's Rosie Rand. I'm the service owner for what we call the Future Hearings programme, and that's a programme within Reform that's bringing new services into play which will support how hearings are planned and managed regardless of what jurisdiction they're in. So my job cuts across the jurisdictions in relation to things like video hearings, so joining a hearing remotely by through a video platform, and how we schedule and list our hearings in the first place, and what information we publish about them, such as the simple things like dates and times of when a hearing is listed to be happening. So I support a number of cross-jurisdictional services in that regard. I'll hand over to Emily.
Great, thank you, Rosie. Hi everyone, I'm Emily Wickens. I am the service owner for civil. So that means I'm responsible for the civil jurisdiction. In terms of Reform, I have responsibility for the online civil money claims service and the damages claims service, which is currently live. And then we have possession and enforcement reform commencing next year as well, and I'll have responsibility for those. So I think that's everyone, so I'm going to hand back to Liz.
Thanks all. So I've got a quick fire question to get us going whilst our audience members start to post questions in the live chat. So our Reform programme ends in March 2023. Between now and then, what's your biggest priority? And I'm going to come to Jane first.
Thanks, Liz. So I mentioned in my introduction that I'm responsible for the common platform, among other things, and I think that essentially is our biggest priority for delivering by 2023. The platform needs to be available for all courts and all professional users. As you know, at the moment we've rolled out to 101 courts. That's about 44% of our courts. And we need to have rolled out the first phase of the common platform by March 2022. Meanwhile, we're designing and developing phase 2 of the common platform. So that's a lot more functionality around case progression, enhancements to the case materials functionality, and integration with the new scheduling and listing solution that I'm sure Rosie will touch on if there's questions about that. We need to have completed that all by March 2023, which is extremely ambitious, but also we believe achievable.
Thanks, Jane. Who'd like to go next for top priority between now and the end of Reform? Let's go to Rosie.
Hi, happy to go next. Although I need to dodge this question because for me, everything I'm doing is a top priority, and we're absolutely committed to doing everything that we've set out to do by the life of Reform. So sorry to whoever asked that question, but I'm not going to give you a straight answer. I'm responsible for things I'm absolutely passionate about. We are bringing in a new video hearing service that is going to replace CVP. And the point about that service is it's actually designed for court and tribunal hearings rather than being sort of customization of a kind of off-the-shelf video conferencing platform. We really think it's going to give all users, especially people for whom coming to court is a rare occurrence, not an everyday thing. You're not professionals who do this day in, day out. And we need to make that experience of coming to court, if you're doing it in a remote participation scenario, as accessible as coming to court in person. We know it can be a stressful experience, and the video hearing service should help kind of remove some of those anxieties if you know that when you join your hearing, everything's going to work smoothly. We're also bringing in the scheduling and listing functionality that Jane referred to. This is absolutely crucial to make sure we can list hearings effectively, and a lot of that is about our internal workings and how we administer things more smoothly to give effect to judicial listing decisions. But hopefully for users, it will mean there'll be more certainty around your hearing. So you know, because we are listing more efficiently, when the court tells you this is when you need to come for your hearing, hopefully that will put more certainty around that for you. And publications and information, we should have delivered our sort of the first phase of that project within the next few months, and that's just going to do such a lot to simplify and make access to really important information easier. So that's kind of, for me, something we should, you know, I'm really pleased that we're getting on and doing that now. I'm going to pass the baton to, this feels like a hot potato game, I'm going to go for Emily.
Thanks, Rosie. I echo your response as well, in that one priority is very difficult to answer, but I will summarise mine by saying delivering an end-to-end service that improves the experience for the user. So at the moment, can everyone hear me now? Sorry, I think, yeah. At the moment, we have a live service for OCMC for litigants in person, and we have a live damages service for legal representatives, and they provide a better service for users in terms of the ability to issue and respond. However, then the case and your experience progresses to paper. So what we want to do is to continue that improved service beyond the issue and response stage, so that your full experience with HMCTS is improved when the case progresses to hearing, the ability to receive your final order digitally, and then to be able to enforce with an improved service as well. So looking at that kind of bigger picture experience for you as users.
And let's go to Adam and then finish up with Jason.
Thanks, Liz. I was just going to jump in and fill that gap. So for me, in family, we've already delivered a few services into reform. And so my priority for them is to make sure that we keep on building on top of the improvements that we've already made. So we speak a lot about continuous improvement. So we've delivered some really big benefits out there for users. And I want to make sure that we deliver on that promise that we're going to continue to improve those services, to listen to feedback and make them better and better. And I know we are, and we'll continue to do that. And then deliver the remaining services that I've got. So particularly keen on the next two projects that I'm overseeing, which is private law disputes and adoption. So making sure we deliver the same benefits for those which have already been experienced in places like divorce and financial remedy. Hand over to Jason.
Hi everyone. So I think you've heard from colleagues there about the range of projects that we're working on. So for me, I think the biggest priority is to continue to deliver the improvements to each of the services, which is tremendously important. So making it easier and effective for people using the family courts, using the civil courts, using the tribunals who are involved in criminal proceedings. But the biggest priority is ensuring that all of this adds up to a much improved justice system at the end of the reform programme. It's not just about the individual programmes, it's about integrating them into a justice system which works for the professional users who use our systems, more importantly for the public users who use our systems and generally need lots of help and lots of support to get through those services. What we want to be able to build is services that members of the public can use in a simple and effective way so that they can resolve their disputes as quickly as possible. So the biggest challenge for me is ensuring that we bring all of the pieces of this together in a way that works for the public user.
Thank you, panel members. I'm going to come now to a question for Rosie. And the question is, what are the future plans for using remote hearings in the criminal courts? What safeguards will be in place so that those with a disability or mental health problems would not have to attend a video hearing, as they would not have the required support that they need?
Okay, thank you. I'll take each of those questions in turn. So in terms of the criminal courts, it's important to start off by saying that video links, of course, have been used in the criminal jurisdiction for a long time. So this isn't new. I think the pandemic obviously massively expanded the amount and volume of hearings where people were joining remotely. So saying that they've been used for a long time isn't to underplay at all the kind of seismic changes that we've all seen in the justice system over the last 18 months. So a lot of these issues are kind of part of well-established practice. What we'll be doing in terms of the video hearing service is bringing that into use in the criminal courts, and that will ultimately replace CVP. So that should provide a more supported, sorry, I'm going to say supported user journey, which sounds like terrible techie jargon, doesn't it? What I mean is when you kind of click through screens to join your hearing, there'll be much more guidance and information along the way for you as to what's going to happen next. So that should provide a better experience for anybody joining a hearing, but the fundamentals of who a hearing is, which hearings are appropriate for people to join remotely, is very much firstly a judicial decision, and secondly a decision taken on the factors pertaining to that hearing. So that's the people in it, the issues for consideration, what kind of evidence might be presented, and practical issues such as actually can people do the participants in that hearing have the technology to connect. So I think the question was about making sure that certain groups aren't disadvantaged if you have a disability or so forth. Sorry, I've talked for so long, I've lost the thread of the question, but what I want to say is that if there are circumstances that mean any participant in a hearing doesn't feel it's appropriate for them, and the court has assumed that it would be, then contact the court and that can be considered, and the judge will make a decision about how to convene the hearing in the best interests of justice. And that obviously means taking account of people's needs and situations and circumstances so that they can give their best evidence and make sure they can engage as to best effect in the hearing. Liz, tell me if I haven't covered all the points there, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. The next question is going to come to you, Jane. How does the team delivering the common platform, which is obviously at the centre of crime reform, undertake engagement activities with defence professionals?
That's a really great question, and I'm really glad it's been asked, actually, because it's something that we want to improve on. But in terms of what we currently do, at the moment we have a defence practitioners working group, and we have members in there from a number of organisations, the Bar Council, Law Society, Public Defender Service, criminal law solicitors, and barristers as well, who come together frequently to go through the designs for the common platform. We had a session just 2 weeks ago to look at some of the key designs that we expect defence practitioners to use, and showing them a couple of different options and asking their views on what the requirements are and the best way to deliver a product that will work for defence practitioners. We also have regular webinars for defence professionals. The last one was in September and is on the internet if you're interested in watching it. And if you're interested in joining the next one, please let us know. And we also ask individuals to come in and have one-on-one sessions with us to talk through specific functionality to make sure that we're getting it right. But we would welcome people, if there are people on this call who would be interested in joining, particularly our defence practitioners working group, then please do get in touch. That group is so helpful to us, and the more people we can have feeding in to the requirements for the common platform, the better it will be for you. So please do get in touch with us.
Thank you, Jane. I'm going to come to Emily next, and this is a question about possession, which is coming live in the session. In possession reform, what do you think is the biggest opportunity and biggest challenge in reforming this service?
Yeah, you may be aware we have an existing service, an existing digital service, Possession Claims Online, that's available to users now. That is limited in its opportunities, so I see us delivering a service beyond what's already available now, reusing some of the opportunities and the feedback we've had from users about the success of online civil money claims and damages. I think in terms of possession specifically and what the challenge is, I think we need to think about how we support users to settle their disputes as efficiently and effectively as possible. So ADR, alternative dispute resolution, is a big is big on our agenda, and we're thinking a lot about how we can bring in more ADR into the money claims process. And I think we'll need to think about how we can support users in possession in that way as well. Linking to that, I think in possession, awareness and guidance and support for the user is key as well, particularly for those users who might be first-time users of the court service, if you're a defendant or potentially a claimant as well, using the possession proceedings for the first time. I think, you know, guidance can be quite confusing, and we want to make sure that that process and that support is there for all of our users moving forward.
Thank you, Emily. And there is a related question for reform of possession, which if I may just add in so that we are being efficient. For the reform of the possession claims system, has it been decided yet whether the PCOL, and if perhaps you can just clarify that acronym when you answer the question, will be replaced or just updated? Whilst a lot of mortgage possession cases are based on arrears, there are other types of claim based on breach of mortgage conditions which are not covered by PCOL. Will the system be expanded to deal with these other claim types?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yeah, sorry, I've been using the acronym. We're very good at acronyms in the civil service. PCOL stands for Possession Claims Online, otherwise known as PCOL, that I've been referring to. So thanks for this question. It's a really valid point there. There is limited scope in terms of when you can use PCOL or not, and our ambition is to absolutely move away from that. So if you are a user who is wishing to file a possession claim or a money claim or an enforcement claim or application or claim with across HMCTS, you'll have that one service that you can essentially log on to file your claim and progress your claim. So we will be looking to move away from PCOL. What we need to do is really think about how we do that, and we'll need to engage with yourselves along the way to make sure that we develop something that works for you as well.
Thanks, Emily. I'm going to come to Adam now, and there are a couple of questions here for you. So the first one is when does the new divorce online application service go live for no fault divorce? Will those in civil partnerships be able to use the same service? If you just hold that thought, and I will read the second question at the same time because it's related. Presumably, when the new divorce proceedings come into force in April 2022, we'll also be able to issue applications to dissolve a civil partnership or apply for judicial separation online as well.
Thanks, Liz. It's always good when the second question answers the first question from somebody else. It saves me a job. So the second person who asked the question's right. So it's April 2022, that's 6th of April 2022. And at the same time, the plan is that we will be able to apply online as you can now for your divorce application. So the team are very busy at the moment putting the finishing touches to the online system so that it's ready for implementation then. And just to say, the plan always has been for reform that you could apply online for your civil partnership dissolution or your judicial separation. And the only reason that that hasn't been added at this stage was because by the time we got to the point of building that functionality, no fault divorce was a thing, and it was really, you know, very likely to happen. And so it just made more sense for the use of public money that we built it once for no fault divorce and didn't have it for the current divorce service. So a long way round of saying, yes, you will be able to apply online no matter what type of dissolution it is you are applying for. And that's a definitive answer, I think. So I think I've covered that.
Thanks, Adam. I'm going to come to Jason now on a different topic altogether. And the question is, on the 27th of October, the Chancellor of the Exchequer announced further funding for the modernisation programme. That was a welcome announcement. The budget confirmed the extra funding will enable the modernisation programme to be completed. What does complete mean in terms of services digitised, and when is completion expected to take place?
Okay, so that's quite a choice question. Thanks, Liz. Let me see how I can pull the strands of it together. So as part of the recent spending review settlements, the department saw circa 200 million, which will help us complete the court and tribunal reform programme. The intention is that the reform programme will be completed by 2023-24. So that funding gets us to there to complete all of the various projects which people have been talking about during the course of the last 2 days. And what does that look like? What it should look like is we should have a pretty much fundamentally reformed county court system for civil claims, for private and public family law. We should have a transformation in the way we do criminal business in England and Wales, in both the magistrates' courts and the criminal courts, through the use of common platform. We should have rolled out the video hearing service, which enables us to do remote hearings in a way which preserves the kind of look and feel of a courtroom, but gives so much more functionality than we've been able to use over the last year or so with video. It really is a tremendous product with loads of functionality, which really captures the essence of how you deliver a hearing in the justice system. And probably one of the most important things for us, absolutely transform the way we schedule and list hearings so that we can do it effectively and remove what we know is a considerable amount of waste and inefficiency in the ways that the justice system has listed cases over decades. We think there's a tremendous prize for us to have there. So it's a combination of digital modernisation of the justice system and long overdue. Changing the way that we do things to make it easier for the users who use those services, and finally making sure it all adds up to a reformed justice system. So that's what it will look like, if we pull this off and get it completed by 23-24. I mean, I could go on for hours, but I won't, because I know we're going to be quite short. But what I will say, if people do want to come and speak to us in a bit more depth about how does this all add up and what does it all look like, more than happy to do that.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, next question, which I'm going to come to Jane to start with, but it may be that other panelists want to make comment as well. And the question is, how did you overcome the cultural challenges internally with the judiciary and across the legal profession to ensure successful reform of service delivery? And you might want to have that as did. How are we overcoming? Over to you, Jane.
I was going to start with that. Thanks, Liz. I was going to start with the thank you for recognising the hard work that we have done already, but we're not there. We've done a lot and we're doing a lot. And it's a continual process. But I think the simple answer is talking to people as much as we possibly can. And I think that's the answer I gave around the defence practitioners as well, isn't it? It's getting the right people in the right room involved in every stage of the process, from before we're even thinking about the nuts and bolts of a thing, to understand the high level of what they want to achieve from change. And that's from everything from setting up a program to designing a small piece of functionality or a small process. And we have a number of different ways that we do that. We have some cross-functional groups who come together, of stakeholders who come together to talk to us about what we're delivering. We have judicial working groups in every jurisdiction. We've got one for crime reform in particular, where we pull them together as often as we possibly can to talk to them about what it is they need from what we're delivering, and also each user group provides really useful insight about their perception of what other user groups need too as well. So the judiciary in particular, and staff users. We have what we call the Crime Ops Forum, and I think that happens across the organisation, where staff come together every 2 weeks to talk to us about how to solve problems, what the problems are, how to define those problems better, how to use data to understand the cause of them. And so I think it really is just putting in the time and the effort to talk to people about what they need and why they need it. And then when you come to embed those changes and hope for cultural changes to happen as a result, then you've already engaged all the way through the process. So it's not a hard thing to land, but that's what we're trying to achieve. I don't know whether anybody else wants to chip in with their answer from their areas.
So I just wanted to just add, we talked about cultural challenges with the judiciary, and I don't think that's quite where we are. I think if you go and take a look at certainly the recent speech by the Lord Chief Justice, you can see absolute strength of his support for reform, plus the detail of the different projects where he talks about scheduling and listing, about video hearings, about common platform. Which kind of underpins what Jane was saying. It's not about HMCTS doing a reform program over here and having to battle with judges over there. It's a partnership. We work together. They're an absolutely fundamental part of helping us design these solutions, and we do it both with judges and to support them in their it's to help them give effect to the justice system. So there isn't a cultural challenge. It's about making sure we can do it in a way which improves services.
Thank you. I'm going to come on to a question now for Rosie. The question is, scheduling and listings are primarily for professionals and interested parties in the CJS, and as such are, apart from at the court building, available at just a couple of dedicated websites. Are there any thoughts about working with local print media outlets to supply that information so the general public has access, especially for older people with no tech/internet access? And if I could just ask again, Rosie, that you clarify any acronyms that you're using.
Yes, of course. Thanks for that question. As the questioner suggests, simplifying how you can access information about your hearing is really important. I'm not sure it's just professionals access that information. There's both, the sort of litigants themselves or defendants or whoever in a hearing, friends and family, anybody interested in that case. And we think that as we reform HMCTS, the principle of open justice is incredibly important. Anybody should be able to see what's happening when in the courts, so that if they've got any kind of interest in it, they can know what's happening and go and observe a hearing if indeed you want to. So in terms of digital access to this, yes, lists will still be posted in hard copy, so anybody can walk into a court foyer and see what is happening. What we are doing in the publications and information project, which we talked about on the webinar yesterday, is also providing a simpler online web-based service, so you can access that information, and that will corral together the variety of websites where different jurisdictions post listing information at the moment. And that's a really interesting point about is there a third way? So I'm going to at this point flag up the change something that matters email address box, and perhaps ask you to get in touch, because it sounds like the questioner's got some interesting ideas that we'd certainly like to hear about, even if we can't deliver within the current publications and information project, which, as I say, is delivering that web-based service. But thank you for the question.
Thank you, Rosie. The next question is for Emily. It's a nice short one. Does HMCTS plan on developing an API to enable the bulk submission of cases?
Thanks, Liz. This topic came up quite a lot in our session earlier today on civil reform, with a lot of users raising the same questions. So pleased to see that it's come up in this session as well. Yes, we have on our roadmap to consider APIs. What we don't have is the detail of exactly how and when, but we are very much aware that it is a user need. Within our existing services, we have secure data transfer, which is an API for users to submit money claims. So we absolutely want to continue to provide services to enable you to do that, and potentially to extend it to more claims than just money claims, which is currently available. So if you're interested in getting involved with that work, I'm sure our contact details will be provided somewhere to you, and I'll be happy to have a chat in more detail, because we need to do better work to understand exactly your systems and how we can provide a service that works for you.
Thanks, Emily. I'm going to come to Adam now. The question is, domestic abuse has been on the rise over lockdown. What has HMCTS done to help these people?
Thanks, Liz. So we have seen a rise in applications for protective orders, and very early on in the pandemic, we put in place some emergency measures to make sure that they continued to be heard without delay. We worked with practitioners and user groups to make sure that process was as good as it could be. And so we acted really quickly with the judges to make sure those cases got before judges, got considered remotely, and those protective orders got put in place. So that's something that we did fairly early on, and continue to make sure that they are given the priority over other types of applications. We've also been really keen to make sure that special measures, so things which might help the applicant feel better when they're giving evidence or they're making their application, to make it slightly easier for them. We want to make sure that's really clear for people, so they know what's available, and then make sure that those facilities are as good as they can be. So we've been working on making sure that we've got the right level of screens, for example, in court buildings, so that if there is some need for some in-person evidence, then the right facilities are there. But of course, also supporting the judges in doing those hearings remotely if it's suitable to do so, so that there isn't that need to be in the same building as the alleged perpetrator. Going forward, domestic violence is the applications for non-molestation are a key part of the private law reform project. So they're a key strand of that I'm keen that we reform, and that we make it easier to make your application, and make sure that those people making the applications are given all the support that they possibly can be by HMCTS, so they've got all the information they need and are directed to the services which can help them the most. So I think, of course, we'd always like to do more, but I think we reacted quite quickly at the start of the pandemic and put in place some good measures for those users.
Thanks, Adam. I've got another question for you, Emily. In response to the Civil Justice Council's February report on vulnerable parties and witnesses, what measures are being developed to support vulnerable court users, particularly as the civil jurisdiction catches up with family and criminal?
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I'll just start by saying this is a report that we're working really closely with the judiciary on, so touching on what Jason spoke about earlier in terms of working in partnership. We're discussing with the judiciary at the moment how we take forward the recommendations and how we can work together. I think one of the key things of the report is making sure we have that signposting, guidance and awareness for users to be able to share with us any of their needs and adjustments. And then secondly, I think it's about HMCTS introducing measures to respond to those proactively rather than reactively. I'm aware at the moment there may be circumstances where users attend the hearing, and that's the stage at which we might first be aware or be responding to the support that you require. And actually we want to be planning much more in advance to make sure that you have the support. So those are just a couple of examples. There are plenty more from the report as well, but I think that guidance and awareness should go a long way. And of course, as was mentioned in the question as well, we do have some catching up to do, but what that means is that we can learn best practice from family and use some of the mechanisms that family have already got in place as well.
Thank you, Emily. And one for you, Jason. Do you see video hearings in crime playing an increased role in reducing the reported massive backlog in cases?
So I think video hearings do play and have played over a number of years huge part in the delivery of criminal justice. Certainly over the pandemic period, we've seen a huge rise in the use of video hearings. I think in the magistrates' court, we're now starting to see the courts there get very, very close to the levels of performance we saw before the pandemic. In the Crown Courts, it continues to be a considerable challenge in terms of the amount of trials waiting to be scheduled and brought on, and the overall capacity of the system. Part of the department's spending review settlement has set aside funding in order to tackle those caseloads. Our plan is to set record levels of sitting days over the next year or two to reduce those caseloads. And video hearings are here to stay, but they're not the single answer to the kind of post-COVID recovery in the Crown Courts. It requires work across the criminal justice system. It requires the hard grind of more judicial sitting days, and it requires us to be able to lift the capacity of the overall criminal justice system to operate at a higher level of throughput than it currently is. So video hearings have been an absolutely brilliant part of the way we've responded to the impacts of the pandemic. They're just not it's just not as simple as they're the one-line answer. It's going to take quite a number of things and a lot of hard work to get the Crown Courts and the criminal courts back to the levels of caseload and waiting times that we all want to see.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks so much. I think we have 3 minutes left, and I am going to draw things to a close. So there are a few practical items to mention, but the first thing to say is to thank all the panelists for taking part and answering the questions this afternoon, to thank all of you for attending and asking questions at the session, and making it a really interesting and varied session. In terms of practical, there is a feedback survey that we would like you to fill in, and the survey is for the whole event, not just this session, and that's really helpful for us to understand how you have found the event and to give us an understanding of your perception of it. And we have recorded all the sessions that have happened over the last couple of days, and if you signed up on Eventbrite, we will be forwarding you the information that we've recorded in about a week's time. You'll be emailed that. That it from me. I think that's all the information that I'm required to give. And so I'm going to close this year's public user engagement event and say thank you once more to the team who've pulled this all together and for all the users who've contributed over the last 2 days.